This is a lecture from Open Tuition. For the free lecture notes that go with this podcast, please visit opentuition.com.
Jackson Limited produces two products and a byproduct in a joint process. So remember, we've just simply one process, but two different products come out of it, or three, I'm sorry, A, B, and this byproduct. And the basic problem, before I remind you of the bits of definition, is that although we can work out what went in, what was the cost of the materials, what was the cost of the labour, whatever else, here you've more than one product coming out. And the question is, how are we going to work out a cost per unit for each product? Alright? In ordinary process costing, we know the cost, there's only one product, so essentially we divide. But when you have two or more products coming out, how are you going to decide on the cost of each? And before we get into the numbers, let me remind you, because again this is a place where they can have these statements, these written questions. The definitions: joint products is basically what I just said. It's where you have two or more products produced in the same process The other term, though, as is mentioned here, byproduct. I'll write the more precise definition in a minute, but byproduct is effectively waste. I said I wasn't going to go right the way through my perfume toilet water example, but there we were making two main products, perfume and toilet water. I said at the end of the process there were perhaps some dead flowers. It's waste, but if we can sell it, I said maybe the pig farmer bought the flowers to feed the pigs, then even if it's waste, clearly if somebody will buy it off you, you might as well get some money for it. So effectively the byproduct is like waste. The strict definition, though, it is really a third product, but it's a product with a low value relative to the main products. And there's no definition of what constitutes a low value. In real life, you as a management accountant would make the decision. In the exam, it's always made very clear. And in this question, certainly it's a low value, that product A sells at $10 a kilo, product B sells at $14. Oh, very obviously, the byproduct at only $1.40, its value is relatively low. Agreed? So that's just definitions. Our problem is to get a cost for each of the main products, which here, the joint products A and B. And if you remember, there are basically two ways you could be asked to do it. There's no right way. Yet again, in real life, you do what you thought sensible. In the exam, they'll tell you which way to do it. And essentially, it's one of these two ways. The most obvious way is the first way, on the basis of, I've put here basis of weight. Strictly, I should have said on the basis of units. It's simply here, our unit is kilos, if you understand me. Here it was kilos went in and came out. It could have been litres going in and coming out. It could have been units themselves going in and going out. But it's on the basis of whatever the unit is. And it's the most obvious way of all. We take the total costs. Here I've given it you. There could have been several costs, material, labour, whatever. You'd simply add them together. the total cost is 460. However, unless you are told differently, any money you get from the byproduct you treat effectively as a negative cost of the main products. So what I mean here is, although we're spending 460,000 in total, there is a byproduct that can be sold for $1.40. We say the net cost of A and B. We take off the proceeds, the money from the byproduct. And how much money do we get back from the waste? There are 10,000 kilos of this byproduct. We managed to sell it at $1.40, which means we get back, is it 14,000? And as a result, the final net cost of making A and B, the joint products, is what? I think 46,000? I hope we're all clear. Read the question carefully. Almost always that's the way we deal with the byproduct. But do read. If they tell you to do different, obviously you do what you're told. Normally they say nothing. It's simply that. Sensible, everybody? However, having got the net cost of 446, that's the cost of A and B. If it's on the basis of units, which here is weight or kilos, all you do is say, right, we spent 446, we say, what's the total production of the joint products? Well, as I keep saying, here our units are kilos. A, we produced 10,000. B, you produced 40. A total of 50,000 kilos. And be careful of one thing, I think I mentioned before, but it's one place they do try and trick you, and it's when you're rushing, you make silly mistakes. Always it would be the production. Very often they say, we produced 10,000 A's and we sold 8,000. Well, fine, if we only sold 8 with 2,000 left in inventory. But it's the production we use to work out the cost. And so we spent 446 producing 50,000 kilos. The cost per kilo, we simply divide total cost over total production. The cost per kilo, therefore, if you'd check me, I think is $8.92. Again, if it doesn't come to a round number, do it to the nearest cent, but $8.92. And on this approach, it would be the same for A and for B. Both of them, the cost $8.92. All right? And also, I don't want to go on too much, but remember the reasons in real life you might want a cost per unit. It's partly for inventory values. If I had have told you that A, you produced 10 and you sold, don't copy this, but you sold 8, fine, you'd have 2,000 kilos left in inventory. You'd value the inventories for both A and B at $8.92 each. Agreed? The other reason you'd be interested in real life is to be able to work out the profit we're making on each. Again, I'm not going to write on the screen, but A sells at $10. If it costs $8.92, we'd say, the profit is, I think, $1.08 a kilo. And equally, B sells at, what was it, 14. Well, if it costs $8.92, the profit is, whatever it comes to, 5, a big number. 14 less 8.92, 5.08, I think it is. All right? All right. Finally, though, there is one bit. Do appreciate that 8.92 is the value when it actually leaves the process. Because there is one extra bit in this question which hasn't affected our costing so far, but when it comes out of the joint process, they're 8.92 a kilo each. But if you look at the last line of the question, product A needs an extra $3 a kilo to be spent on it before it's ready for sale. And so surely, when it's ready for sale, when they're completely finished, well, in both cases it was 8.92 when it left the process. Product B, there's no mention of needing to spend any more money on it. So product B has a final cost of 8.92. Product A, though, it came out at 8.92, but for some reason A alone needs an extra $3 spent. And so, when it's completely finished, each kilo would have a value of 8.92. Sensible? Arithmetically, obviously, easy. And so, in fact, any inventories of completely finished units, A will be 11.92, B will be 8.92. And of course, the final profit per unit, A, in fact, on this basis makes a loss. It costs 11.92 and sells for 10. B makes a nice profit. It costs 8.92 and sells for whatever it was, 14. Okay? Alright, because of that second reason, the alternative way of getting the joint costs is the second one, the basis of sales value. And here isn't hard, but do be careful. It's here more than anywhere that people make silly mistakes. First of all, we need to get the total cost, as always, of the joint process. And that we've already done. It was the 460 we spent, less the money from the byproduct. I won't show all the workings again, but the cost we were trying to split was how much? 446. You're all with me? This time, though, we want to split that between A and B. But instead of giving them the same cost each as we did originally, if one is worth more than the other one, so to speak, if it has a higher sales value, we'll give more cost to the one with the higher selling price and less cost to the one with the lower selling price. The way you split it, again, how you show your workings is your choice, but be very, very careful. In order to be able to split for each of the main products, A and B, we work out this. And let me write it, but then check with the numbers what I mean. It's the total sales value of the production when it leaves the joint process. Now, do be clear what I mean, and do be careful here. It's not arithmetically desperately hard, but it's so easy in a question to pick the wrong figures, that if I do B first, B is ready for sale when it leaves the process. Do you agree? B didn't need any extra work. And so its sales value when it leaves the process check me, but it's $14 a kilo? You work out the total value, sales value, of the production. And so, how many kilos did we produce? It was 40,000. And so when it left the process, the value of the production, if someone would check me, is, I think, 560,000. And again, be careful. They're very likely to tell you, we produced 40,000, we sold 35,000. Well, and the rest was left in inventory. For these purposes, irrelevant. It's always the value of what was produced. Clear? Product A, with a slight problem, in that, of course, we know how many kilos were produced. It's 10,000. However, although it's eventually going to be sold for $10, that's not its value when it left the process. You can only sell it for $10 after you've done some extra work. All right? And so what we do there, to get effectively its sales value, we take its final selling price, which is what? 10. But it's only what you might call approximate. We say it's going to be sold for 10. However, that's only after we've spent an extra 3. And so, as an approximate, that's all. We say, well, let's pretend that its sales value when it left the process was the net $7. All right? And just in case they use the word, the $7 there we call the net realizable value. So if it was ready for sale, no problem. It's just its sales price. If any products do need extra work, then, as I say, the final price less the cost of the extra work, we say the $7 is what it was worth when it left the process. So $7 a kilo, the total value of production was 70,000. And therefore the total value of all the production, 630. Are we all still with me? The reason we did that is our job, remember, is to split the joint costs. We know how much we spent in total, 446. Well, we split it in total what was it? I remember right, 446? In total we split it on the basis of total sales value. And so check my arithmetic. But on sales value, A was 70 out of 630. And so we'll give that proportion of the joint cost to A. B, the total was 560 out of 630. Well, I hope you're all clear what I mean when I say the same proportion. And so what is it? To A, 70 divided by 630 times 446. I could have chosen nicer figures. I think comes to 49556. To B, 560 divided by 630. I think comes to 396,444. I'm sorry it doesn't divide perfectly. In the exam it probably will. If it doesn't, well, do as we do here. We're not there yet, but is everybody with me? And there's no quick way. You can do your workings any way you like, but there's no quick way. But having split it in total, now we can finish and get the cost per kilo. What is the cost per kilo for each? For A, remember we produced 10,000 kilos. The total cost we've given is 49,556. So dividing, A becomes to the nearest cent. Will you check me please? $4.96. And again, if it doesn't work perfectly, do it to the nearest cent. B, we got a total cost of 396,444. The total production of B was 40,000 kilos, which gives us a cost per kilo of, again to the nearest cent because it doesn't divide, is it 9.91? Thank you. And finally, I should never say of course, but finally, I hope we all appreciate, that is the cost when it leaves the process. The final cost though, B is immediately ready for sale, and so its final cost $9.91 per kilo. A though, it's valued at $4.96 when it comes out of the process, but there's the extra work of $3 a kilo. Its final value, therefore, when it's ready for sale, is $7.96. And again, of course, were there any inventories left of A or B, that's what you'd value them at. And secondly, if we ever wanted to know how much profit we were making on each, A sells for 10, its cost is 7.96, the profit is the difference of 204. B, it sells for, what was it, 14, its cost is 9.91, it makes a profit of 409. I hope no problem. Okay? So I've got everything there. Again, physical units, you've not much excuse, just be careful, that's easy, the first method. It's the second method where, apart from taking a bit longer, I don't think numbers-wise it's harder. But do make sure you're clear, because it's there where people make silly mistakes. I can't stress enough, it has to be, there's no quick way. You split it on the basis of the total sales value of the production, when it leaves the process. Okay?